Well, we looked at the Koran, and did we finish the Joseph chapter? Let's just take a quick look if we did. What chapter was Joseph again? Chapter 12. So we get the woman unnamed because obviously the authors, whoever they may be, didn't have the actual original material near them. Potiphar's wife, we know that's who it is, Potiphar's wife. How do we know it's Potiphar's wife? Because we have the original of the story in the Joseph material, in the so-called Western Bible. I don't know why they call it a Bible. It's based on the word biblos, which means book, the book. I mean, I don't know what you want to call it. In any case, it's Potiphar's wife. Even the Old Testament doesn't know her name, just knows her husband. But the stories differ on the interesting character that we have here in the Koran. The woman's character, the husband's character, Joseph's character. The casual observer who says, look at the shirt and see if it's ripped from the front or the back. All that is new material having to do with character. And the prophet feels that the word I was looking for the husband, he's henpecked the husband. He's not able to act. And though I think it's interesting the way the prophet or the angel presents the material here, I think it does lessen the impact of the story in terms of plot. Now, it increases the story in terms of character, I agree, but lessens the impact in terms of plot. You don't get that swift-moving plot that are so typical of so-called Bible stories. And this is one of the most interesting ones. And of course, the realism of the Bible story is not here. I mean, obviously, the husband would not start, chatting with the slave boy, and the women wouldn't be brought in to see how beautiful Joseph was. All these new elements that are added that really say, how do you know they're added? Well, because I've read the different stories. And you say, well, I haven't. Well, you read them and then you judge. That's the best way to find out these things. So all these different elements that are new, so the story grinds to a halt because the prophet really, or the angel, is not really interested in saving the Jewish people. But the Old Testament is. That's what the Old Testament's all about, saving the people. And Joseph has to go to prison, so the fact this woman makes a pass at him and he resists or whatever, the husband sends him to prison, which would be quite normal, but that's what the movement of these events leads him into Pharaoh's confidence, court, and a high position in Pharaoh's court. In any case, finally we did do this. By line 40, Joseph is following Islam, and he's following, he has surrendered, and he is basically a Muslim. I think, let's see, I think that's basically enough. I read you that material about where I think things are beginning to deteriorate a bit in terms of biographical material, where we're talking about the different wives and how you shouldn't talk to the prophet's wives. We read that, didn't we? Yeah. So I think there we're getting a situation where the powers are beginning to, and people do get older, Now I know a believer wouldn't agree that anything has changed, and that's the difference between, believers and non-believers, academics and non-academics. And, you take your pick on that. I'm sure the new Supreme Court justice wouldn't agree that the powers have diminished. We've got probably a religious fanatic coming in as the Supreme Court justice or something like that has now been chosen and so on. So, that's what makes horse racing. Everyone has a different view of things. Some people are more conventionally pious. Other people are more iconoclastic. I'm afraid you're looking at an iconoclast. I apologize. Okay, I think we set the Koran aside, and I think we can move on to the second part of what we want to do in this course. We left the prophet when he was having troubles in Medina and fighting his various battles. He left and gone to Medina. What are the names of the people? I'm going to sketch the history of Islam now for you. If you have in your history books that I've given you up to the caliphates and things, you should read all of that, whatever history book you happen to have. Who are the people who take the hijrah with him? Mu, someone, H-J-R, hijrah, U-N, plural. The Muhajirun, people who go on the flight. And then you have in Medina you have the Ansar. It's a different plural in Islam. Ansar is also plural. The plurals in Arabic are patterns of words and vowels. That's also a plural. You wouldn't know what it is. And like, for instance, the sahib is a word for companion. Ashab. You see, that's a plural too, meaning the companions. And you see, it's the same form. You look at the vowels to see the form. And that's how there's patterns of words. That's a plural pattern. This is a plural pattern too. It's interesting how the language is very systematic, extremely systematic, built up on three-letter roots. The vowels don't count, so the three-letter roots are S-H-B, N-S-R, H-J-R. I can find you the three-letter roots in these words. You may not be able to find them as quickly, but they're all there. So, but Arabic is still a difficult language in terms of it has a huge vocabulary. And you're not used to it. It's not something people ask. How long would it take me to learn Arabic? A year or two? I said no, more like 4 or 5. So it's not something you want to bite off and chew lightly. It's not a simple language. It takes time. German takes a lot of time, even though we have a lot of German words in English too. Anyway, the Ansar are the people who join the community in Medina, meaning helpers. Ansar is helpers. And they together, the Muhajirun and the Ansar, make up the Ashab, the companions. The companions of the Prophet. Our plurals in English are easy, aren't they? Just add an S on to things, right? Simple. It's more complicated in Arabic. Anyway, we saw who in the Surah of the Cow and other like surahs, the Medini surahs as we call them, who the kind of oppositions were. The backsliders, the hypocrites. I think in Arabic it's munafiqun, the hypocrites. And also the Jews. Christians too, but not as much as the Jews, because he's not having direct problems with Christians. They're not really there. He has an ideological dispute with Christians on Jesus' supernatural being, his immaculate conception, his supernatural birth, all that sort of thing. He would disagree with Christians about. But with Jews, he's having an actual problem because they're there, and he has certain claims that have to do with their religious books, and he claims that they're not entertaining his claims. And, if I went into a mosque with my claims, would they entertain me? No, I don't think so. And it's pretty normal that established groups don't entertain, Johnny-come-lately newcomers very readily. And so I would have the same problem. If I went to the mosque in Orange County and I said, listen to me, I want to tell you these things, I'd be out of my ear, wouldn't I? So, you can't blame people for being, recalcitrant, stubborn, not being very open to new directions that new people want to take. As Paul found out, it's much easier to go overseas and find new people to do that with, and that's what the new Christians that Paul discovered. And in Muhammad's case, it was much easier to turn away from the Jews and go to the tribes. And he succeeded. And Paul succeeded, and so did Muhammad. And I think someone was saying on TV the other night, we have a billion Muslims or 1.5 billion Muslims and 1.5 billion Christians, and we've only got about 15 million Jews left in the world. So the daughter or, you know, derivative religions have succeeded far beyond any of the original in terms of, you know, their appeal and their cosmopolitan reach. And, but, you know, something you can think about. It's easier to go, as I said, to the new people than to take it to the old people. Much easier. And you just can't take it to the old people. You know, unless some terrible disaster has occurred, it wouldn't happen. So the Jews come in for his ire, and I'm afraid that's reached to the modern period. It's been easy for anti-Israel people and propagandists and people who want to get people excited and angry and worked up about different problems, for good or for bad, justified or not, I don't know, to work on this aspect because it's in the Koran. So it can be easily, you know, inflamed. And that's a lot of what you see at the present time in this antagonism, because it's already there from this experience in Medina. So, it's unfortunate for the two groups that is the case. That makes it more difficult and easier to make people upset and not happy with each other. Okay. Hitler found the same thing was possible in what he was working with in Europe for the same reasons. It was already in the New Testament, and so all he had to do was inflame a similar passion to get where he wanted to go on this particular issue. Interesting to compare those situations. In any case, after Badr, where the prophet was successful, we know there were 3 Jewish tribes. This is in the biographies. I don't remember their names totally, but the first Jewish tribe was expelled. His treatment of the Jewish tribes in Medina got more harsh as he became more powerful. And after the Battle of Uhud, remember Uhud? That was in 626 or so, 5 or 6, where he was wounded. The second Jewish tribe was expelled. Though I'm not sure, I haven't read the biographies recently, whether it's the men are killed and the women were taken as slaves or whatever, the children, women, I'm not sure. You'd have to check the biographies of the prophet. It's in the biographies of the prophet. I don't have all, I can't remember all that, but it gets harsher. And after the Battle of the Trench, which was in 627 or so, what was the Battle of the Trench? When he, actually, a Jewish individual supposedly from Iran, Persia, Solomon, the Persian, Solomon that is, recommended the stratagem, whether that's true or not, to dig a trench to stop mounted cavalry sort of warfare, camel or horse, because Medina was protected on 3 sides by palmeries, and only the 4th side was open. That saved Medina. In any case, after that, he did liquidate, not expel, the last Jewish tribe. Again, I don't have the different names down, but if you don't agree with that or think that's wrong, read. It's not the Jews who have any record of this. It's in the biographies of the prophet. You can read it. In any case, that was the 3rd one, and so when he returned to Mecca in the next year, the Truce of Hudaybiyah. So we have Hudaybiyah, which was he then marched on Mecca. He was a relatively free hand in Medina by this time. It's about 628 or so, 627, 628. He stops, and the Meccans agree to purify the Kaaba before his coming. Some of the big names, as I told you, of Meccan aristocracy come in. Abu Sufyan, the head of the Umayyad clan, comes in. He's not happy about it. Khalid, his military commander, who's a famous name in Islam even to this day, Khalid ibn al-Walid, comes in. He defeated the Prophet at the Battle of the Trench. Like, for instance, in recent history, the PLO organization will have different brigades. One will be called the Khalid ibn al-Walid Brigade or something, and the reason is he's the great military champion of Islam, or things like that. For instance, Saddam used to have a rocket, and he'd paint on the rocket Qadisiyah. What happened at Qadisiyah? Qadisiyah is where the Muslim armies defeated the Persians. So these are things that are commemorated in the modern period, in the politics of the modern time as well. So these are all what one would know about classical Islam. And then another famous name, Amr ibn, these are all basically al-As. They shouldn't be. Or al-Asi, as he sometimes called. These are all important names in early Islam. All of them connected to the previous ruling Meccan aristocracy of the Quraysh tribe. They're all part of the Quraysh. But they were mostly the Umayyad clan, which was the principal Meccan Quraysh clan. The prophet was Hashim, clan of Hashemite clan. And so he comes in, they purify the the Kaaba of idols. We get the takeover of the previous pilgrimage activities. It becomes part of Islam, as we already saw in Surah 2 of the cow. And the prophet leads the first pilgrimage. After that, he sends his deputies. I'm not sure of the sequence, whether Omar, who was one of his important assistants, or Uthman was a member of the Umayyad clan who had gone to Ethiopia with some emigres in the period of the time the prophet was fleeing different problems that he was having. So Uthman never led the pilgrimage, but I think Omar may have done, and of course Ali, the prophet's cousin and actual son-in-law, who married the prophet's daughter. What was her name? Fatima. That was really the prophet's only surviving daughter. So Ali, and that will be the Shiite claim, has children through the family of the prophet. Through the prophet's daughter Fatima, who conserve his bloodline to some extent and mix it with Ali, who is his first cousin as well. Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu Talib being the father of Ali, prophet's uncle. Abu Talib turns to Abi in the genitive case. Son of genitive case, possessor. Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Ali is another person with claims. I don't know if he led one of these pilgrimages or not. I think that some people say, I guess he led the last pilgrimage before the prophet died. You can check into these things, but if you're a Shiite, you'll think that he did, and if you're a Sunni, you'll think that he didn't, and so on. Shiites elevate Ali almost to supernatural status, like a Jesus figure. The Sunnis just treat him as a normal person. That's the key. Ali will be the key here. Anyway, you have these Rita wars going on, which are the wars to bring in the tribes of the Arabian Peninsula. And the champions of Islam are all making their name in these wars, Ali, Omar, others of that kind. Now the prophet has 10 wives. His favorite wife supposedly is Aisha. This is what every Muslim knows, right? Nobody doesn't know this. That's why they can call out in unison with me these names right off because of, and this is what I want to teach you, basically what every Muslim knows, so that you'll be cognizant and be able to converse in a familiar way with what every other Muslim knows, and that you won't feel that you're lacking anything particularly that most other Muslims will be familiar with. Doesn't matter if they're in Indonesia or in Nigeria, they'll know these characters. They may not know Abu Sufyan or Amr ibn al-As, but they'll know Aisha, Ali, Omar, and so on. Now, the Prophet has, as he said in that one chapter, I think 10 wives. Only him, not other Muslims. And Aisha is one of the child bride, and there's one episode there, She That Disputeth. I don't have time for that, but the Prophet had, I think, a freedman called, I think his name was I forget what his name was, Zaid. His name was Zaid. It's the story of Zaid's wife, where the Prophet took Zaid's wife, even though it was forbidden to take your son's wife. The Prophet had adopted Zaid as a son. He was a freedman, and Zaid's wife didn't want to be married to Zaid anymore, and she wanted to be married to the Prophet. The Prophet was very accommodating always in these cases. And that's covered in the Koran. I think several chapters refer to that. Also, Aisha's problems are referred to in the Koran. The fact that Aisha came to the camp at one point escorted by a young man, and there was an accusation against her of impropriety, and the Prophet demanded 4 witnesses to such a thing. And that's where you get 4 witnesses in Islam, and obviously you wouldn't have 4 witnesses. So he was actually very sympathetic to the situation of women in his own day. The way it was, he actually cares about women, in fact. Whether that would be sufficient for women nowadays is another issue. He's not a male chauvinist sort of individual from that period. He's sensitive to the needs of widows and orphans, and if she wants to marry me, okay. I'll take care of her. You have to take care of the widows, people who were lost in battle and stuff like that. Zaid actually leads the first column north into a reconnaissance mission in Syria, Palestine, Syria. So the Prophet in his lifetime was already considering the conquest north into Palestine, Iraq, Syria, and further afield. And Zaid leads the first expedition north. I don't know if he was killed at that time or not. I don't recall the actual outcome of that. I know that he was the one who was in charge of that original, maybe around 628 period, 629 or so. The Prophet also took a Jewish wife, or maybe 2 Jewish wives. Not clear, but he took one of the, for instance, one of the tribes that had been expelled was expelled to an oasis not far from Medina, mentioned in the book of Job, called Khaybar, the Jews of Khaybar. And when he conquered that place and killed her father, or the Muslim armies killed her father and brothers, he took her to wife. And Muslims say she was one of the ones that poisoned him, if he was poisoned, whether he was poisoned or not. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, because she would be not happy about what happened to her father and her brothers. No woman would be, and so someone might have done such a thing. I don't know. I wouldn't want to, I mean, you say, was he poisoned? He may have just had bad heart or something, or something else, cancer. Who knows? He deteriorates towards the end. I showed you in the Koran where you don't have those beautiful verses of the early period. There is definitely a down movement a short-temperedness, testiness. So it's not clear, but there was also an Egyptian wife who came down from Egypt, and some accused her of it. So it's not clear or anything. Muslims don't really think of him as being poisoned. I have no idea. He did die suddenly in 632, and things were not completely arranged in the way everyone wanted them to be arranged. So the succession was the key problem in 632. He didn't stay in Mecca. He came back to Medina. He made his base of operation. And Medina has still become the center of operations of Islam. Mecca is just the pilgrimage site. Medina is the center of Islamic administrative and other activities. And Medina had a name change. Originally it was called what? Yathrib, and later it became Medina al-Munawwar. Al-Munawwar of the lights. Munawwara. Medina al-Munawwar. The city, Medina literally means city. There are lots of cities. That's why even in Spain and in Mexico you get people called Medina. Wherever Arabs have gone, the name Medina has followed. It just means city. I mean, there are people from Mexico, aren't there, who you may have met, who are called Medina. It's a popular name in Mexico, and in South America generally, and in Spain and other places. It's because of Arab civilization and the spread of this particular name went far afield, because it just means city. What other Arab names, for instance, have come to California from Arabic? Well, one name that's gone to Mexico is Guadalquivir, Guadalupe, things like that. Guada. In Arabic, what's that? What is that? Wadi. Guada in Mexican Spanish, South American Hispanic, is the variation on Wadi in Arabic. Wadi means river valley. Wadi Kabir, big river. The river near Cordoba is the Wadi Kabir. And in Spanish, that's Guadalquivir. Guadalquivir. Kabir is Kabir. Guada is Wadi. I don't know where they got Guadalcanal from, but anyway. big canal. But Wadi Canal, pardon me. But anyway, Guadalquivir is big river. Guadalajara, I mean, you know, you're getting past me there to figure that one out for you. So that's an Arab name that traveled into Spanish, that came into the Americas and went far afield. Another famous one I think we mentioned, Gibraltar. What's that? Jebel Tar. Jebel Tariq. Tariq was the Berber Muslim commander of the original conquest of Spain. And so he's called, and so where he's landed in Spain is commemorated supposedly, I don't know if he really landed there, as Jebel, the mountain of Tariq, the rock of Tariq, Jebel Tar, Gibraltar. Now it's the name of a big American bank, I think. The rock of Gibraltar, Jebel Tar, mountain. Jebel in Arabic is mountain. So we do have some things that came into the West. Medina is actually, just means city in Arabic. Originally it's called Yathrib, al-Yathrib. Okay, so the tribes that had come in under the Prophet from 628 to 632 at his death they felt that they had paid homage and obeisance to the Prophet. When he had died, they didn't feel that they needed to stay in Islam or be part of this community. And so they basically became disaffected and felt they could leave. But in the wars from 632 to 634, under the next caliph, or the new caliph, the first caliph, we'll get to him in a moment, our continuation of the Urida Wars, the Wars of Succession, and the champions and others brought these tribes back in through warfare around the Arabian Peninsula. Who was the successor? I said it was sort of a situation that nobody really knew what to make of it, hadn't been provided for, and this is where people say, we're going to do Shiism. Yeah, well, this is where Shiism starts, right here. This is the dispute. It still is raging today. It's just a dispute over succession, and then it snowballs into other accoutrements. But originally, it's a dispute over succession. What happens? Prophet dies. The companions of the Prophet, the ones I just erased, the Ashab, say, it should be one of us who succeeds him. And they elect, through consensus, which will later be a basic part of Islamic law, consensus. Ijma is called in Islamic law. Ijma, consensus. That little squiggle at the end is an ayin. Ijma, consensus. They say that the person who should succeed the Prophet was a very respected older man called Abu Bakr. So he's first caliph. This is the caliphate. Caliphate simply means successor. Successor to the Prophet. Khalifa, to succeed. That's what it means. Khalifa means to succeed. Khulafa, the plural, odd plural. Khulafa, the caliph, the successors. These are known as the right-guided successors. The Khulafa Rashidin. Rashidin, right-guided. Khulafa, the plural of Khalifa. You see, the plurals in Arabic are different than you would expect in most languages. The vowels and the simplification change the emphasis. So these are the right-guided caliphs. Number one, according to the Sunnis now, and this is Sunni Islam, and Sunni Islam really is based on ijma, consensus. That's why the Sunnis say we're democratic, because we believe in democracy, we believe in elections, we believe in consensus. But it's a consensus ultimately when we get into law of the scholars, as where Sunni Islam goes. But Sunni means customary Islam. As it develops in the law, Sunni will actually come to mean the custom of the Prophet, the tradition of the Prophet. And that's part of the development of Islamic law that takes place over the next 2 centuries. But for the moment, this is the beginning of Sunni Islam too, with the right-guided caliphs, customary Islam. And what guarantees it? Ijma. And ijma is a principle found in the hadith of the Prophet. I heard some guy on the radio talking about hadith this morning as I drove up. I didn't know what he was talking about. It was supposed to be the sayings of the Prophet in his everyday life, he was saying, but every saying from the Lord's Prayer to God knows what got into the hadith. And hadith is somewhat like the Gospels in terms of how Islam is formed. It's like the good news. Hadith means news. Gospels are good news about Jesus Christ. The hadith are news about Muhammad, basically, outside of the Koran. But a lot of things that he never obviously said, according to Western scholars, found their way into the hadith. Muslims don't think that, but Western scholars think that. So this is another argument between West and East, and why people like that fellow Edward Said, hated Western Orientalists, even though he taught at Columbia, because they criticized Islam. They weren't criticizing Islam. They criticized Christianity, Judaism, and everything else. So the Western scholars just behave that way towards tradition. They try to analyze it, oral tradition. And the hadith were something that they were very stern about, the Western scholars, and Muslims don't like that. But that's just the way Western scholars are very stern about what? The Gospels. They rip the Gospels to shreds. I don't think people in Kentucky and Tennessee like that either. I don't think Pete Bush's new Supreme Court nominee will like that either. But that's what I think Muslims just don't realize, that Western scholars do that. They rip things up. They say, well, why do they rip things up? Well, that's just what scholars do, because they study things and they analyze them. And when you analyze and study things, you rip them up. It's just normal. We should see what we do, as some of you have said, to the Old Testament. We should rip it up. Even though we might like the book. We're not against the book. We might enjoy the stories, but we like to see how it was put together. So we don't get into the divine origins of the Old Testament, of the New Testament, or even the Koran. We're totally equal on that. Some Muslims will say, oh, you're being hard on Islam. I think we're actually being very easy on Islam, from my point of view. I don't think we're being hard on Islam at all. In fact, we're being very kind to Islam. The only people who say that we're being hard on Islam is they just don't know what we do in the other areas. So, and if a religious studies teacher isn't doing it, he's not doing his job as a religious studies teacher, because you might as well just go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque then. So you come to university to get analysis. So we try to do the analysis. And one of the places that they do this analysis is in the Hadith. The Hadith is where the battle is waged. I don't think they do this with the Koran that much. They only do what I did with the Koran. They don't undermine the Koran or question it. They think it represents the Prophet's authentic ideas. They don't really say it's not accurate. You know, it may not be, I don't know, but they don't. Scholars don't say it's inaccurate. They just say this is early, this is late, this is Medinese, this is Meccan. They like to do that kind of thing. That's not hurting the Koran to any extent. You follow me? But the Hadith, they're not kind to the Hadith. But they're no worse to the Hadith than the Gospels. Anyway, so-called anti-Orientalists, Edward Said and company, don't like what Western scholars do, even though he made his living in the West and had a very good living in Columbia. And I wish I had the job he had at Columbia. I went to Columbia. I had a PhD from Columbia. They didn't hire me. They hired Edward Said, and he had a good sinecure his whole life, and I'm sitting here in the boondocks. So he had no complaint, frankly. He has no complaint whatsoever. I wish I had the salary of the job he had in Western academia. Anyway, it's easy to, beat your own nest and soil your own environment. That's the easiest thing to do. Never mind. I don't agree with him on his attack on Western Orientalists. I think Western Orientalists have done a good job and are to be complimented on the good work that they've done. And if you don't like what they've done, do it better. As Muhammad says, write a better one. In any case, to get back to the issue. So, in the Hadith, as things went on, Sunnah became Sunnah of the Prophet. Originally, Sunnah simply meant, and this is what a very famous 19th century scholar called Goldseer wrote a book called, Muhammad Anish's Tribune, he wrote it in German. I think, though, I forget what he was writing about this particular word, but he said that Sunnah originally meant in Arabic a beaten track in the desert, where the caravans went. One caravanning over, and so it was a beaten path where the ancestors trod. So it became the custom of the ancestors. But as the Hadith developed, it became the custom of the Prophet. There's one Hadith put in the Prophet's mouth that says, "My community will never agree on an error." My community will never agree on an error. I'm sure the Prophet never said that, but in any case, it's attributed to him. That's what Western scholars criticize, that Eastern scholars don't criticize. It's not a criticism, it's just an observation that justifies the whole retrospectively. In other words, anything the scholars finally agree on cannot be an error. It's sort of like the infallibility of the Pope doctrine. That's giving the Prophet a lot of prescient foresight to say anything my community agree on will not be an error. Anyway, that is enough. If the community of scholars agrees on the Hadith as authentic, they are authentic. But Shiism, you see, doesn't agree. Yet we now have mullahs in Shiism that claim that whatever they agree on is authentic too. So in fact, they are basically putting the same position forward. In any case, that verifies the whole. That is the commandment for consensus, ijma. Whatever my community will agree on, it cannot be an error. And so the community, according to Sunni Islam, agreed on Abu Bakr. That could not be an error. So therefore, according to Sunni Islam, the right-guided caliphs begin with Abu Bakr. The Khulafa Rashidun, number one, is Abu Bakr. And he is functioning from around 632 to 633. His claim to fame, supposedly, was that no one objected to him. But people did object to him. Who objected to him? The partisans of Ali. And that's where, who was asking me, are we going to do Shiism? Who was that? Okay, that's where the Shiite dispute starts right there. What do the partisans of Ali say? The partisans of Ali, the Shia, the party of Ali. Shia means party. It's not called this at this point, but it becomes this. Shia means party of. And it's a specific party of. It's not a house party, it's a support group, like a Republican Party, as opposed to the Democratic Party. The party of Ali says no. The Prophet appointed Ali, he led the last pilgrimage, he was the caliph, he should have succeeded the Prophet, he was the only living relative of the Prophet, he married the Prophet's daughter, he was the biological successor to the Prophet, he fathered the children who were the only offspring of the Prophet, he was the legitimate successor. Anyone not understand this issue? So we have a family succession, which is a normal kingship type of situation, imperial situation, as opposed to a tribal, democratic, quasi-democratic consensus situation. Favored by who? The companions of the Prophet. The companions said, no, we don't want Ali. We want Abu Bakr. And Abu Bakr was, for all intents and purposes, chosen. But the Shiites will to this day say, oh, no, he wasn't chosen. We never recognized him. We never recognized him. So it goes right to the beginning with the death of the Prophet. We never recognized him. We don't recognize Abu Bakr. We don't certainly recognize Omar. We absolutely do not recognize Uthman. Okay, finally you made Ali Caliph, the fourth Caliph. That's the only one that we recognize. All the other three are illegitimate. All the other three are illegitimate. So right from the start, what is this? The split between who? Sunnis and Shia. It's not called that yet. That's what it is. The split between Sunnis and Shia. And it's still going on when? Today? Yeah, it's still going on today. Because these groups have gone far afield, have descendants, have entrenched themselves in different places, and don't worry, they're never going to settle it. They're never going to settle it. I hope it never comes to atomic warfare, which is what some people seem to want to take it to that level, because the world will be in a terrible plight if it does. I mean, I'm just saying, as an outside observer, I hope it doesn't ever get that high. Iran seems to want to raise the ante. I hope they're just bluffing, frankly, because if they aren't, things are going to get really nasty. That's why the Iran thing is so important at the moment. People don't understand what's going on, but these are very, very deep things, and this is not a joke. This is sometimes not even rational. This is a gut level thing, an emotional thing, a feeling in the pit of your stomach. It doesn't have to do with the Russians, whatever you say about them. They were rational in terms of their limitations. They understood their limitations because they wanted to survive too, but some of these people don't want to survive. I spoke to a guy in Jerusalem one day. I said, look, if you bring nuclear weapons to Jerusalem, he's a Hamas guy, a good friend of mine. I said, you're going to be killed. He said, Fadlan, Fadlan. Fadlan means, welcome, welcome. He said to me, let them come, let them come. Yes, I understand that. I do. I mean, I understand that's how he felt. I think he was being honest with me. He's since changed his mind. I've known him for about 20 years. He's a good man. He's an antiquities dealer. He ran through some difficult times, but that's what he said when I first, I knew about Hamas long before it hit the newspapers, because he was a good friend of mine, and we used to sit and talk, and we used to chat about these things, and he loves me, I know, and I like him a lot. And he treats me like a brother even today. And I go, he treats me like I'm some long-lost kinsman, and he's a very sweet, gentle person. But on these issues, these are like stuck in the pit of his stomach. These are not rational things, these are emotional things. And so where the Russians, you could expect maybe Khrushchev would back down. It's never going to happen with some of these situations. That's why the situation that's coming in the world is going to be extremely, extremely nothing like you've seen before if nuclear weapons come into this situation. That's all I can tell you. And I'm someone who knows about the Middle East. Sorry to have brought that aside. I just want to tell you that these things are emotional, deep. We're talking about the Sunni-Shia split. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. The Shiites are not going to become Sunni, and the Sunnis are not going to become Shiites any more than the Protestants are going to become Catholic. In fact, the Protestants are more likely to become Catholic, and the Catholics are more likely to become Protestants, although, no, I can't see the Catholics ever becoming Protestant. But then the Shiites becoming Sunni. And that's what's going on in Iraq today, and that's what the Bushis didn't anticipate. Personally, I don't think it makes any difference whether they anticipate it or not. There are ways of dealing with things, and they're just very superficial in the way they approach things. But if they'd taken a course like this, it could have helped them, I think. I think this course could help a lot of people of that kind to deepen their understanding of what the powers that they're dealing with are. Anyway, that's an aside. So right from the first election. Now, what was Abu Bakr's claim to fame? Just that he was the father of Aisha, the Prophet's favorite. She was a child bride, I think around 13 or 12 when he married. And she said that it was his favorite wife, and so I guess he treated her father with a good deal of respect also. He was an older man, and they thought that there wouldn't be a lot of trouble with him as a caliph. And the caliphate was basically instituted. It means successor, the successorship. You know, the companions of the Prophet are very similar to what? In Christianity, the apostles of Jesus. In fact, I find it more useful to look at the apostles of Jesus more like the companions of the Prophet in Islam. Studying Islam helped me an awful lot to understand early Christianity. Because seeing the disputes that occurred in early Islam, it throws better light. It made me understand what the James dispute was all about. The James group are more like the party of Ali, the family of the Prophet. Whereas the Paul group are more like the companions of the Prophet, though the other companions didn't like Paul. So it isn't a matter of, it's not completely synonymous. But Paul is calling himself the apostle to the Gentiles and so on. And basically, you know, his approach does win out in Christianity as we know it. And he's opposed to the successorship of the family, the people claiming to be, most Christians don't even know that Jesus had a family that made claims. And there is a family, and they do make claims, and they did make claims in early Christianity, and James was the brother of Jesus, who did seem to succeed, in the same way Ali groups want to succeed Muhammad. All of that made me understand Christianity better. It was my study of Islam that people say, how can you study Islam and then know anything about Christianity? Because studying Islam helped me understand Christianity. And studying the criticism of the Hadith literature helped me understand the criticism of the Gospels. So these things can really be helpful to you. Okay, fine, let's move along. So, Abu Bakr is caliph, but there's a group that doesn't think he should be caliph. Under Abu Bakr, the tribes in the Arabian Peninsula are brought back in. Nothing much happens during his reign except that. The Zayed, I think 626 maybe, Zayd was sent north to reconnoiter the situation. The Zayd expedition north is not being acted upon. First, Islam is being unified again under Abu Bakr. After that, however, the real power behind Abu Bakr, everyone thought, was Omar. Omar is a very rough, tough, highly respected person. He's not from the, he too is not from the Umayyad clan. He's from another important Quraysh clan. I forget what the name of it is. But he's caliph from 634 to, I think, I'm not sure, 644, I'll say 640. He's really the man everyone says behind Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was a figurehead. Omar was the power. Omar is described in early sources as a very rough, tribal sort of person, dressed in rough clothing, wore, you know, the Bedouin kind of woolen cloak and things like that. Did not do for fancy things. He didn't want Muslims to mix with conquered populations. He wanted to keep the purity of original Arab tribal life strong. He's an Arab chieftain, really, as much as an Islamic caliph. And it's under Omar that the conquering gets going. And things have been regulated under Abu Bakr. When Omar, the Shiites hate Omar. When I meet someone and they name Omar, I know they're not a Shiite. The Shiites will not use the name Omar to name one of their children. That's how deep these things go. So I know if I meet someone, Omar, somebody, he's never going to be a Shiite. You know, that's it. It's like calling if you're, you know, Europe, you're calling your son Hitler or something like that. You know, you're not, you know he's not going to be a Democrat family, and so on. A Republican isn't going to name his kid Roosevelt. You know? Yet a lot of Afro-Americans used to name anyway in the old days after presidents. Roosevelt was Roosevelt Greer and people like that. These were very popular names among Afro-Americans after Roosevelt, because Afro-Americans felt Roosevelt did a lot for them. Whether he did or not, I don't know, but that's what they felt. But you wouldn't get a Republican naming their kid Roosevelt. They hated Roosevelt, and that's about the size of it. And Bush is trying to undo everything Roosevelt did. I don't know if he's succeeding or he's right or wrong, but that's what he's up to. In any event, the conquering got going. And I'm not sure if I get the right, by the way, when Omar did get to Jerusalem, a Christian prelate saw him on the Temple Mount there. And if you know your Christian and Jewish scripture, you know there's a passage from Daniel about the abomination of the desolation. It comes from the book of Daniel. It's mentioned in the Gospels. The little apocalypses are attributed to Jesus. And it says something like, when you see the abomination of the desolation standing where it ought not to stand, take to the hills, Jesus says at one point supposedly. I don't think he ever said these things, but you know, he supposedly said that in the Gospels. How many are familiar with that passage in the Gospels? It's in the little apocalypse. I think it's in Matthew 24, 25, 26, and parallels in the other Gospels, the other synoptic Gospels. So one of these Christian prelates saw Omar on the temple ruins on where the Mosque of Omar is now. It's called the Mosque of Omar. Where everything was in ruins since the Roman days. The Romans threw down the temple and everything. And he said, in truth, this is the abomination of the desolation, standing where it ought not to stand. Spoken of by Jesus when he saw Omar on the Temple Mount. I don't know if that's a true story, but it gives you the frightening impression Omar would have made among people who were not sympathetic to him. I find Omar a very attractive character myself. I find him more attractive than Ali, personally. It's just my own taste. I don't find Ali a very attractive character, but others do find Ali. If you're Shiite, Ali is a god almost. He's a saint, supernatural being. He's the Imam. And the Imam is a new concept Shiism brings in. We'll get to that. The armies go north. One army goes into Palestine, Syria area. One army is sent towards the Iraq area. This is in the late 30s. This has all been planned seemingly from the... Now, how come this happened? Well, because prior to this, the two big powers in this part of the world were the Byzantines and the Persians. And apparently the Byzantines and the Persians have been squabbling for hundreds of years. And at this time, they had just gotten done with a war. So, the Persians are over here, out this way, and the Byzantines are over here. The Byzantines are Christians, the Persians are Zoroastrian, and they've been fighting. And it turns out that the Persians had just taken Jerusalem in the early part of the 600s, and the Byzantines had controlled this area for a long time. So they've been fighting, and they had weakened each other in these fighting, but they had no idea that there was a new power coming to life in the Arabian Peninsula. So while they were fighting and weakening each other, this new power was coalescing in a place that they never expected. And out of nowhere, suddenly the Muslim armies emerged. After the Persian conquest of Palestine and Jerusalem. And the Persians were involved with the Jews. They'd always been protective of the Jews since the time of Cyrus. And they'd allowed the Jews to go back to Jerusalem, supposedly in Cyrus's time. It's in the Bible, in Isaiah and other books, in 500 BC, 400 BC. Under this Persian conquest in 680, they allowed the Jews to go back, or were encouraging them to go back. Because the Byzantines had, because of Christian theology, forbade Jews in Jerusalem succeeding to the Romans, because the Romans had taken the surrender of Jerusalem, and because there were so many uprisings in 70 AD and 136 AD. After the second uprising, the Romans forbade Jewish presence in Jerusalem. And that's why you had the Wailing Wall. You know why you have the Wailing Wall? Because the Jews were only allowed to go back to commemorate the fallen temple once a year on the 9th of Ab, and the Romans allowed them to go into the Jerusalem to cry, wail at the wall, because to remember past glories and to pray for a restoration. And they only allowed them in once a year, and that became part of their religious custom. So the Persians let them back in this time around 600. But then the Christians reconquered it again, and expelled everyone again, expelled the Persians, expelled the Jews. And these reports must have come down to the Arabian Peninsula. These could not have been unknown in the Arabian Peninsula. The Prophet would have absorbed these reports. I think the Christians reconquered around 620s, right in the middle of his activity. I think 624 or something like that. 622, the Christian reconquest of Jerusalem. So he knew about these things. He knew about the disputes. He knew about the weakening of he must have known. His spies knew, his intelligence officers. Zayd went up there for a reason. He didn't just go up out of the blue to see what the situation looked like. He obviously knew there was an opportunity, and when Omar took over, Omar exploited the opportunity. You guys following me? So in the 630s, the one column is led by, the Persian column is led by Khalid ibn al-Walid. This is one of the most famous events in Islamic military history. He's on the Persian column. There's another group in the Meccan column. I mean, in the Palestinian-Syrian column. I forget who it is. But one of the young officers in that group is a person called, I think his name, I'm not sure, but I think his name is Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan. And his younger brother is with him. His name is Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. He's only a young lad. I think he may be in his teens, 13, 15, 16, something like that. He's a standard bearer for his brother Yazid in the columns. Yazid is killed in one of these battles. The Muslim columns in Palestine, Syria are not having a good time of it. This is around 636. Khalid ibn al-Walid, the commander of the other column, that's in Iraq, or going to Iraq, southern Iraq, we know where these places are now, gets word to go to help in Palestine. He wheels his army around, and this is the famous event in Arab military history, forced march through the desert, and we know the road from Amman to Baghdad is a tough road. It's, I don't know how many miles, I think it's 600 miles or something. It's not an easy road. And he appears suddenly in Palestine with his army, and he saves the day and defeats the Byzantines, just as he had defeated the Prophet earlier. This is a great victory for the Muslims. The commander is Khalid ibn al-Walid. He rescues the forces. And the other towns in Palestine are conquered apace. Many of them are walled cities, so they're bypassed. They don't really surrender so easily. But finally, by about 640, everything is pacified. Acre falls around 639. Jerusalem falls, even though it's a walled city, somewhere in that period. And that's the time that Omar comes up and visits Jerusalem. And that's where he's seen on the Temple Mount. This Christian prelate sees him walking around the Temple Mount there, the head of all the Muslim armies, the Caliph Omar, great imposing figure. And there's another one in the original army. All these, see, the Muslims didn't know how to fight. The people who knew how to fight were the previous Meccan aristocracy, the Umayyads. They knew how to fight. They were princes who were, trained in warfare to some extent, as all nobles used to be. And they're the ones who are leading the Muslim armies. So there's this other guy in Khalid's army who's Khalid's, I don't say second in command, but he's one of his advisors. He's known as the Fox in Islam. His name is Amr ibn al-As. And I told you about him. He's one of the ones that he's a very significant character in this period of Islamic history that we have unfolding before us here. So Amr in Khalid's company writes to Omar in Medina, where Omar is carrying out the administration, and says he wants permission, Palestine being more or less subdued, this is around the late 630s, to go into Egypt. And Omar is very careful too. He's not a crazy person. He's very, he's very cautious. And apparently he sends Amr a note back. If you haven't yet gone beyond El Arish, if you haven't yet gone the traditional border between Palestine and Sinai and Egypt, El Arish, stop. If you've already passed it, continue. So the messenger gets, according to the story, to Amr before he reached El Arish. He told his adjutants to hold the messenger up, past El Arish, then he opened the message. Given some of the nature, shows you a little bit of the way Amr is remembered as a strategist and as a tactician and as a wily person. So the message said, if you haven't passed El Arish, stop. If you've already passed, continue. Well, he'd already passed when he opened the message, so he continued. Obviously, he'd opened it before, but, or he knew it was in it, or whatever. But in any case, we don't even know if these are true stories, but they've come down, apocryphal, and the different historians, Al-Tabari, other Muslim historians have told these stories. They're very interesting stories. This is the romantic period of Islamic history we're dealing with now. To my mind, this is the really most attractive period. Very attractive, very exciting, very romantic. People who like romance and this kind of thing will find. I don't think the squabbling at Medina is as attractive as all this. This is very attractive. And something I've always said to my Muslim friends, I think the Islamic history is greater than its parts. Islam is greater in sum total of all its parts, not just one aspect. The Koran isn't the only part of Islam; it's all the rest that make up Islam. So the whole is greater than its parts. Well, we argue about that, and some Muslims understand what I'm saying, and others don't. But this is, to my mind, a really glorious period of Islamic history right here, what we're dealing with. Anyway, Khalid does do the famous wheel in the desert, does come and rescue the Palestinian columns. Yazid Ibn Abi Sufyan has been killed. Muawiyah is a young boy. He's survived. Amr does take Egypt with a lot of trouble back and forth. The Byzantines come and raid Alexandria with their navy. The Byzantines are a sea power. They're able to recoup and come back, but slowly the Muslims, being a land power, grind them down. Amr becomes governor of Egypt, a very rich province. He gets extremely well-to-do, rich, very influential. You see if I can get this right now. Omar. The problem is that I think, let's see if I can get it right. Muawiyah, I think, gets to be governor of Syria because of his family connections. Why would he be governor of Syria? Because of his family connections to what family? The Umayyah, the Abu Sufyan clan, the principal Meccan aristocracy. I think Muawiyah is now getting ambitious. He's no longer so young. He's increased in age, I guess. He's a young man, but he's got servitors around him. He wants to, he's in mid-40s now, I guess around 644. He starts to construct a fleet on the Lebanese coastline. And he writes to Omar. I think this is the right story, sequence. Cyprus is so close that you can hear the roosters crowing or the chickens clucking. I'm not sure how he put it, but something to that effect. A little exaggeration, but he wants to go to sea and invade Byzantine possessions at sea. They take the wood from the Lebanese coastline, they construct their own fleet now to rival the Byzantine fleet. The Arabs are ready to take to sea, to become a sea power, the Muslims. Omar is cautious. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't see Arabs as seamen. He doesn't see Arabs as seafarers. He wants to consolidate the land situation. And at that point, when Omar refuses to give permission to go to sea and to countenance the Cyprus campaign, he's assassinated. That's first of the caliphs who was assassinated. Now, all the caliphs after Abu Bakr are assassinated. No one dies, and this starts this bloody history of Islamic internecine warfare and strife. I think, I'm not sure, but I think they say he was assassinated by a slave that was sent down by Muawiyah. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Anyway, Muawiyah is going to be an extremely important name. That's why I singled him out. You ever heard the name Muawiyah before? How many have heard of Muawiyah? You have. You have. What did Muawiyah do? Okay, Miss Ali, allegiance, language allegiance. What did Muawiyah do? Muawiyah started the Umayyad Caliphate. That's what he did. And he was the first Umayyad Caliph, and he reigned for 40 years to the 680s. So it is a huge, illustrious career. It spans 4 decades. Someone asked me about Augustus. You know, they're doing that thing on HBO television. Are you watching it, Rome? It's a good soap opera about Rome, but it incorporates some of the historical elements. So I know the guy who wrote some of that, John Milius. He also did the Patton movie, and he did the movie Geronimo, and he did surf movies, and he's pretty, I know him through my son who knows his daughter. He's a pretty talented person in terms of historical dramas. And so my sons were asking, well, who's Octavian? Who's Octavian? How many have seen this thing? He's in there. Octavian is a young boy. He's in there, and I tell him, well, Octavian, don't you know Octavian is? And no, who is he? He's Augustus. He becomes Augustus. He's really the hero of the whole thing, Octavian. He's the one who's going to continue through all the episodes, and they're going to obviously follow him. At the moment, they're working on Caesar and Pompey and the civil wars and Cleopatra and all that stuff. And then they have another storyline among the people down in the pits, the lower classes, upstairs, downstairs, Roman style. So it's pretty good soap opera. It's on HBO. I recommend it. I think it's better than nothing. It's a little bit, it's got a lot of porn in it too, to appeal to modern taste. But in Rome at that time, there would have been a lot of porn. So I mean, it isn't so unreal. But he's like Augustus. Muawiyah is like Augustus. He said, well, how long did so I got him out Suetonius, the 12 Caesars, and I read him last night portions about Augustus from Suetonius, the 12 Caesars. He said, what? Augustus reigned for 40 years? I said, yeah, that's right. He died in his bed. And Muawiyah also died in his bed, and he reigned as the Umayyad Caliph for 40 years after all this trouble. But we'll get to Muawiyah's great career. It's a tremendous career, very underrated, because no one likes it. Sunnis don't like him, and the Shiites don't like him. So his career is like, nobody likes it, but he was extremely successful. And it's the reemergence of the Meccan aristocracy that he represents. Let me keep you 5 more minutes if I might. Trying to finish up at a good point here. So, Omar is assassinated, seemingly by a Greek slave that Muawiyah may or may not have sent down, I don't know. Anyway, the next successor is Uthman. And Uthman reigns 644 to 656 when he's assassinated. Now, at this point, you see, Uthman is an Umayyad. He's the only one of the Prophet's early companions, the Muhajirun, who is from the Umayyad clan, the principal Meccan clan. So there is some Umayyad influence going on here. Amr in Egypt, Muawiyah in Syria, Khalid, the Umayyad military commander that defeated the Prophet. All these people are taking over Islam. Omar doesn't want all this. Omar wants camp cities. Muslims should remain uninfluenced by the people they've conquered. Muslims should be separate. They should not settle in the occupied territories, as it were. They should conserve the initial purity of Islam. The Umayyads don't want this. Amr doesn't want this. Abu Sufyan's people don't want this. They want to conquer, get rich, mix with the local population, and so on. Uthman is a good, effective leader, but he's a block to this. He's too conservative, too old-fashioned, too old school. He gets assassinated. The new guy, Uthman, is a weakling. He only cares about the Koran. He's pious, very pious. And under him, supposedly, nepotism flourished. These other people ran things while he studied the Koran. That's why he's famous for having compiled the Koran that we know. So that thing in the Topkapi Museum where it's Uthman's Koran, it's under Uthman that the Koran in its final form is put together in the form that we know it. So Uthman is a very pious Muslim, but you know, he's from the, all these other people who are getting rich in Egypt and other places are basically running him. In any case, this is what's going on under Uthman's reign. He's admired for his piety, but not for his politics. And there's a lot of things simmering under the surface that are going on. There's a lot of angry people. A lot of people who blame the surety for Omar's assassination and things like that. In any case, the conquering goes on apace. Expeditions start because Omar's dead across North Africa. The fleet is built. Cyprus is taken. Attacks are even made on Constantinople, Istanbul, Byzantium. There's a big battle called the Battle of the Masts, fought off the coast of Turkey in 656, where the Muslims have a big naval fleet and they defeat the Byzantine fleet at the Battle of the Masts. It's called the Battle of the Masts because of the masts of the ship. Well, let's go and say, let me just finish. And after the Battle of the Masts, a disillusioned group of really partisans of Omar, Omar's son, some other people, it's not clear who. There's a fellow called Abdullah ibn Omar and some other groups, some involved with Ayesha, Abu Bakr party, the Omar party, others who don't like what they're seeing, go down and assassinate Uthman while he's reading the Koran, which is why we have this thing about the bloody Koran of Uthman at the Islamic Museum in Istanbul, Topkapi Museum, whether it's really his blood. That was supposed to be the page of the Koran he was studying when he was assassinated. Supposedly he put his hand up and a finger was cut off, and in Istanbul they supposedly have this finger that was cut off. You say that you're familiar with this. I haven't seen this, and I don't know, but you'll tell us about it next time. In any case, it sends everything into turmoil. Conquering stops, everything stops, civil war begins. For all these competing parties. And I'll pick up there next time. I don't think you'll get this in most classes that you take, and I honestly think this is good stuff. But that's because I think I'm a good professor, but others may not. I give you what I would have wanted people to give me. That's how I wish somebody had given me this stuff when I was your age, that's all. See you. Thanks. Look, you were leaving. Oh, okay, you're doing it good.
You want to go?
Huh?
You want to go?
Yeah, that's good. Nah, just leave. That's good.
The reign of the 4 years of the caliph, were you talking about?
Yeah, we haven't gotten him as caliph yet. We're going to get him.
Oh, okay. So this is...
That's in the future. Huh? No, it's not.
I mean, much after.
Yeah, much later.
Okay.
After all this civil war, a lot of people are going to get killed before he gets to be killed.
I need to talk to you about the exam.
Yeah, what about
If you
it?
remembered, it was the debate tournament last
That's right.
Thursday, yeah,
Right.
in Colorado.
Okay, let's see if I have any exams over there. Yeah, what? Oh, I don't know if I have an exam with me.
Well, I can't take it right now.
Okay, fine.
Is there any time that I could do you have office hours or
Well,
something?
let you, I'll tell you what, you take it home and do 3 essays instead of 2.
Instead of 2?
That's your punishment.
I No, sorry. Do you have it on you?
I don't have it. I'll have to give it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
You said you gave me a makeup class because I was taking the GRE.
Yeah, same as her, what I just said to her. Your punishment, tell her what your punishment is.
He'll give it to you tomorrow, and you have to do 3
Next
of the
time.
essays instead of 2 and take it home and do it.
Your punishment is you gotta do all the essays, not
Okay.
2 out of 3 essays.
But you get to take it home and do it.
Yeah,
What
well,
do
obviously, I'm not gonna
we-
stand, I don't have it here with me, I'll bring it next time.
So tomorrow I can pick it up from you?
No, well, tomorrow we don't have a class.
Can I come to your office?
No, I'm not gonna be there.
You're not going to be there?
No.
So when do I pick it up? Thursday?
Next, yeah, Thursday.
Well, as you probably saw, I was I'm nodding off, trying to get
That's
as
all right.
much as I can
That's
down.
all right.
We're going to keep going over some of this,
Yeah,
because I know,
right, your last question, yeah,
Okay.
we're moving quicker.
yeah, because some of the stuff I'm kind of catching, and I know part of it's the, I think the names and whatnot, and I'm like, who? But as far as the text outside to sort of reinforce it,
Whatever you can find.
okay,
I'm going into more detail than a lot of people do.
okay,
Okay?
great, thank you.
So where do you normally sit for this class? Here, two people are watching. Doesn't matter. Like I sit up front.
So you're getting all this stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. See, they can't say I'm anti-Islam. I'm not anti-Islam. I just like to do it the way I do it, straight, right? Yeah. I don't think
From
I'm,
an analytical point of view.
I try. I don't know if I succeed, are we?
So I think it's good that you should take good and bad
Yeah.
aspects and analyze both.
I think that's what we try anyway, but some people don't like any analysis. They just want to have faith, and okay, that's okay, but I told them that I wasn't going to do that at the beginning. I think we're over the rough spot thing. The only other rough spot is Islamic law. That's tough. It's tough to be critical about the hadith. See it. But I think even a Muslim can learn from taking this, don't you think so?
Yeah.
I think so.